The Gestapo called her the most dangerous of all Allied spies. Soviet commanders recorded her tally at 309 confirmed kills. The Nazis placed bounties on their heads, launched manhunts across occupied Europe, and still they could not stop them. In an era when women were expected to remain home, these extraordinary individuals stepped into the deadliest roles the war offered. They became snipers, saboteurs, couriers, and assassins. Some survived to tell their stories. Others paid the ultimate price. In today's video, we are diving into the stories of 10 of the most dangerous women of World War II. Lyudmila Pavlichenko grew up in a modest Ukrainian household, but from an early age, she displayed an exceptional talent that would one day make her the most feared sniper in history. At just 14, she joined a shooting club near her home in Kiev, honing skills that seemed almost supernatural in their precision. When Nazi forces invaded the Soviet Union in 1941, Lyudmila was among the first to volunteer for combat duty. Military officials initially tried to assign her to a nursing unit, but she insisted on joining the infantry as a frontline sniper. It was a decision that would change the course of her life and terrify the German army for years to come. Stationed in Odessa and later Sevastopol, Lyudmila became a ghost on the battlefield. She moved through rubble and shadow, eliminating enemy soldiers with cold efficiency. By the time the siege of Sevastopol reached its brutal conclusion, she had recorded 309 confirmed kills, including 36 enemy snipers engaged in deadly duels across no man's land. However, her remarkable career was cut short when a mortar blast left her severely wounded. Evacuated from the front, Lyudmila was sent on a propaganda tour to the United States, where she became the first Soviet citizen to be received by an American president at the White House. Eleanor Roosevelt befriended the young sniper, and the two women corresponded for years afterward. After the war, Lyudmila returned to the Soviet Union and faded from public view, passing away in 1974 with relatively little recognition for her extraordinary service. Virginia Hall arrived in France in 1941 with a mission that seemed impossible. An American woman operating in Nazi-occupied territory, she faced dangers that would have broken most agents within weeks. What made her situation even more remarkable was a secret she carried with her. A wooden prosthetic leg she had named Cuthbert, the result of a hunting accident years earlier. Despite this physical limitation, Virginia became one of the most effective spies the Allies ever deployed. Working undercover as a journalist, she established networks of informants, coordinated supply drops for resistance fighters, and helped downed Allied pilots escape to safety. The Gestapo soon identified her as one of their most dangerous adversaries. Klaus Barbie, the infamous Butcher of Lyon, reportedly declared that they must find and destroy the limping lady at all costs. When the threat of capture became too great, Virginia made a desperate choice. In the depths of winter, she crossed the Pyrenees Mountains on foot, navigating treacherous snow-covered passes with her wooden leg causing agonizing pain with every step. She reached Spain exhausted but alive. Rather than accept a safe assignment, Virginia volunteered to return to France, this time parachuting behind enemy lines to organize resistance operations ahead of the D-Day invasion. After the war, she joined the newly formed Central Intelligence Agency, serving quietly until her retirement. Virginia Hall passed away in 1982, one of the most decorated female operatives in American intelligence history, though her remarkable story remained largely classified for decades. Andrée de Jong was only 24 years old when she founded one of the most successful escape networks of the entire war. A young Belgian woman with no military training, she created what became known as the Comet Line, a secret route that smuggled downed Allied airmen from occupied Belgium across France and over the Pyrenees to neutral Spain. The journey was extraordinarily dangerous, requiring safe houses, forged documents, and trusted guides at every stage. Andrée personally escorted the first group of soldiers along the entire route, walking beside them through hostile territory where a single mistake meant capture and death. Over the following years, the Comet Line saved more than 800 Allied servicemen, returning them to Britain where they could fight again. However, operating such a network in the heart of Nazi-occupied Europe carried terrible risks. In January 1943, André was captured by the Gestapo following a betrayal. She was subjected to brutal interrogation, but she refused to reveal any information about her network or the brave volunteers who kept it running. The Germans could not believe that such an extensive operation had been organized by a young woman, assuming that a man must be in charge. André survived imprisonment at Ravensbrück and Mauthausen concentration camps, emerging at the war's end as a symbol of courage and quiet determination. She continued humanitarian work for decades, passing away in 2007 at the age of 90. Violette Szabo seemed destined for an ordinary life until tragedy transformed her into one of Britain's most determined agents. Born to a French mother and an English father, she married a French Foreign Legion officer named Etienne Szabo in 1940. Their happiness was brief. Etienne was killed at the Battle of El Alamein in 1942, leaving Violette widowed with a young daughter. Consumed by grief and a burning desire for revenge, she volunteered for the Special Operations Executive, the secret British organization tasked with sabotage and subversion behind enemy lines. Her trainers noted her exceptional marksmanship and cool demeanor under pressure. In June 1944, just days after D-Day, Violette parachuted into occupied France on her second mission. However, her luck ran out near Salon-la-Tour when her team encountered a German roadblock. What followed was a firefight that would become legendary among resistance circles. Violette provided covering fire for her companions to escape, holding off an entire SS patrol with her Sten gun until her ammunition was exhausted. Captured and transported to Ravensbrück concentration camp, she endured months of brutal treatment. In February 1945, Violette Szabo was executed by a single shot to the back of the head. She was 23 years old. Her daughter Tanya later received the George Cross on her mother's behalf, making Violette one of the most decorated female agents of the war. Noor Inayat Khan carried an extraordinary contradiction within her soul. Born into Indian royalty, descended from the legendary Tipu Sultan, she was raised on principles of nonviolence and spiritual devotion. Before the war, she worked as a children's author and as a musician, writing gentle stories about kindness and compassion. Yet when Nazi forces swept across Europe, something shifted within her. Noor volunteered for the Special Operations Executive and trained as a wireless operator, one of the most dangerous assignments available. Radio operators rarely survived more than 6 weeks in occupied territory. In June 1943, she was sent to Paris as the sole remaining wireless link between the French resistance and London. Her network had been devastated by arrests, and superiors urged her to return to England. Noor refused. For months, she transmitted critical intelligence while constantly moving between safe houses to avoid detection. However, betrayal came from within. A French woman, allegedly motivated by jealousy, sold Noor's location to the Gestapo for a modest sum. Captured in October 1943, Noor was classified as highly dangerous because of her repeated escape attempts. She was transported to Dachau concentration camp in chains. On September 13, 1944, Noor Inayat Khan was executed alongside 3 other female agents. According to accounts from witnesses, her final word was a single defiant cry, "Liberté." Odette Sansom understood that her decision to become a SPY might cost her everything. A French-born mother of 3 living in England, she answered a government appeal for people with knowledge of the French coastline. Within months, she was parachuting into occupied France as a courier for the resistance. Working alongside her commanding officer, Peter Churchill, Odette helped coordinate supply drops and sabotage operations across southern France. In April 1943, a German double agent infiltrated their network. Odette and Peter were arrested by the Gestapo and separated for interrogation. What followed were some of the most harrowing months any agent endured. Odette was tortured repeatedly. her toenails pulled out and her back burned with a hot iron, yet she revealed nothing. She protected her network by insisting that she was the leader and Peter merely her subordinate. Sent to Ravensbrück, she survived conditions designed to break the human spirit. When Allied forces liberated the camp in 1945, Odette emerged weighing barely 80 pounds, but unbroken. She later testified at war crimes trials, helping bring her torturers to justice. Odette Sansom lived until 1995, a quiet reminder that courage sometimes wears the face of an ordinary mother. Maria Oktyabrskaya channeled her grief into a weapon of war. When her husband, a Soviet military commissar, was killed fighting the Germans in 1941, Maria sold everything she owned: her house, her possessions, her memories of a shared life. With the money, she purchased a T-34 tank and sent a letter directly to Joseph Stalin requesting permission to drive it into battle personally. Stalin approved. Maria named her tank Fighting Girlfriend, and she painted the words on its turret in full white letters. In October 1943, she joined the Soviet forces on the front lines, becoming one of the few female tank drivers in active combat. Her ferocity in battle quickly became legendary. During one engagement near Vitebsk, her tank was disabled by enemy fire. Rather than retreat, Maria climbed out under heavy shelling and repaired the tracks herself, returning to the fight within hours. However, in January 1944, her tank was struck again during an assault on German positions. While attempting another field repair, Maria was hit by shrapnel. She fell into a coma and died 2 months later without regaining consciousness. Maria Oktyabrskaya was posthumously awarded the title Hero of the Soviet Union, the highest military honor her country could bestow. Hannah Senes made a choice that seemed to defy all logic. Born into a comfortable Jewish family in Budapest, she immigrated to Palestine in 1939, escaping the growing darkness spreading across Europe. Safe in her new homeland, she could have waited out the war in relative security. Instead, she volunteered for one of the most dangerous missions imaginable, parachuting back into Nazi-occupied Hungary to rescue Jews facing deportation to the death camps. In March 1944, Hannah jumped from a British aircraft over Yugoslavia, then crossed into Hungary on foot. She was captured almost immediately. The Germans discovered her radio transmitter and demanded she reveal the codes that would allow them to communicate with British intelligence. Hannah refused. For months, she endured brutal interrogation, beaten and tortured while her captors threatened to harm her mother, who had been arrested as leverage. Still, she revealed nothing. On November 7, 1944, Hannah Senes was led before a firing squad in a Budapest courtyard. When offered a blindfold, she refused, choosing to face her executioners with eyes open. She was 23 years old. Her poetry, written during her final months, became some of the most beloved verses in Israeli literature. Josephine Baker dazzled audiences across Europe with her extraordinary talent and magnetic presence. An African-American woman who had fled the racism of her homeland, she became the toast of Paris in the 1920s and the 1930s, celebrated for her dancing, singing, and undeniable charisma. When war came, Josephine made a decision that surprised those who knew her only as an entertainer. She volunteered her services to French intelligence. Her celebrity status provided perfect cover. Josephine traveled freely across Europe, attending parties with diplomats, military officers, and Axis sympathizers who never suspected the glamorous performer in their midst. She smuggled photographs and documents pinned inside her underwear and invisible ink messages written on her sheet music. Information she gathered helped the Free French forces coordinate resistance activities across occupied territory. After the liberation of France, Josephine continued supporting the war effort, entertaining troops and raising morale wherever she traveled. For her extraordinary service, she became the first American-born woman to receive full French military honors at her funeral in 1975, a testament to the remarkable double life she had led. Nancy Wake earned a nickname that would echo through history, the White Mouse. The Gestapo placed her at the top of their most wanted list, offering a 5 million franc bounty for her capture. They never caught her. Born in New Zealand and raised in Australia, Nancy was living in France when the German occupation began. She immediately joined the resistance, first as a courier, then as a leader of guerrilla forces operating in the mountains of central France. Her ability to evade capture became legendary, slipping through Nazi checkpoints and vanishing into the countryside whenever the enemy closed in. She was far more than an escape artist. She was a warrior. During one operation, she killed an SS sentry with her bare hands to prevent him from raising an alarm. She personally led attacks on German installations and coordinated supply drops that armed 7,000 Maquis fighters under her command. When the Allies liberated France, Nancy Wake was among the most decorated women of the entire war, holding honors from Britain, France, and the United States. She lived until 2011, passing away at the age of 98, the last surviving legend of an extraordinary generation. These 10 women came from different nations, different backgrounds, and different circumstances. Some sought revenge for personal losses. Others acted from pure conviction that evil must be opposed regardless of the cost. A few simply found themselves in impossible situations and discovered reserves of courage they never knew they possessed. What united them was a refusal to accept the role that history had assigned to their gender. In an era when women were expected to remain safely on the margins, they stepped into the deadliest arenas the war could offer. They killed, they spied, they sabotaged, and they endured suffering that would have broken most soldiers. Many paid with their lives. Those who survived often returned to quiet obscurity, their contributions forgotten or classified for decades. Yet their stories endure as powerful reminders that heroism recognizes no boundaries of gender, that courage can bloom in the most unexpected places, and that ordinary people, when called upon, can achieve extraordinary things. Until next time,